Hey guys, welcome back to Two Girls, One Cut featuring Tracy, as per usual. Um, you can find us at nighthawk-radio.com. That's our website. You can also find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, YouTube Music. We're also now on Rumble. On there, we're Nighthawk Radio, all one word. This is also now the official station of the Ohio Blitz football team starting September 6th. We've got a couple new podcasts on with us now. We have Unfiltered Nation. That comes on Sundays at 8 p.m. And then there's also Mountain Mysteries on Saturdays at 7, which I'm really interested in. They'll also be talking about some true crime.
Yep, that's a true crime show.
Yeah. And then you can also find us on the Live 365 app to listen live that way if you'd prefer. Am I missing anything?
I think you got her.
Did
Yeah,
I
you
get
nailed it, girl.
did I get the whole spiel?
It's
got it.
growing enough to where it
You
takes
got
up
to
half
write
a
it
page.
down.
I know, yeah, you
I
got to
love
write
it.
it all down. There's so much.
Yeah, but
I
that's
love
good.
it.
That's a good thing, man. I mean, we're growing. We put on a
That's
couple.
right.
I think 3 shows just this week, and possibly in the next couple weeks another 2, maybe. So
Yeah, that's very exciting.
yeah, it's
Um,
growing.
we come on Thursdays at 7, and then the McKinsey Hour following right after us at 8.
Yeah, and
And
chat
then
room.
lots of others.
Don't
Lots of
forget about the
others.
chat room. You
Yes,
can
there's a
chat.
chat room now too.
That's right.
So
So during the shows, you can chat.
you can chat while you're listening to the show. We try to pop on and kind of chat back and forth with you
Great.
guys.
Yep.
Yep, try to participate. But this week we're going to talk about Robert Berdella. This is one that I did not know about. I was actually listening to a podcast myself, a true crime podcast, and they were kind of talking about their favorite serial killers. And somebody had mentioned Robert Berdella. And I thought, well, who is that? I want to know about him. And he's a very interesting feller.
The Kansas
Very,
City Butcher.
yes, the Kansas City Butcher. He also goes by the Collector.
Collector.
There was an old movie. I think maybe from the 60s. And it was called The Collector, and it was about a man who would hold women captive. And I guess that it just kind of inspired him. He saw that movie when he was 16, and that's kind of where I think he got a lot of his ideas and fantasies from.
I don't know anything about this guy.
No, but I
As
feel like I need to
usual.
check it out.
Good.
I
Yes,
mean,
that's
as
good.
usual, you guys hit it from me very well this week. You
Well, I
dropped
did tell you about it yesterday, and I
you
think
did
you kind
drop
of
a few
figured it out.
hints
Yeah.
yesterday, but it didn't leave me enough time to do any research on him. So I am learning as you guys tell it.
Yes.
So
Yeah, he's a sicko.
Oh, very, very.
that's the best kind.
Right? I think so too. So Robert Berdella, he went by the name Bob. He was
Bob.
born January 31st, 1949 in Cuyahoga, Ohio.
Another Ohio boy.
Another Ohio. He was the oldest of 2 boys. His parents were Robert Berdella Sr. and Mary Louise. And his dad worked for a for the Ford Motor Company. He was a Catholic. They were a Catholic family. They regularly attended mass. Um, as a child, Berdella he was very smart, but he was a bit of a loner. He didn't like to go outside much. He wanted to be inside. He didn't like the outdoors. He had a speech impediment. He had really thick lensed glasses because he was nearsighted. And then his brother, who was 7 years younger than him, was very athletic. loved sports, and I think Dad,
Little opposite.
yes. So Dad kind of viewed Bob as a failure for not participating,
Why can't
in
you be more
sports.
like your brother type thing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So he was definitely unfavorable. His father was also pretty like physically and emotionally abusive. He did very well academically, but he did get bullied quite a bit. So, as you can imagine,
I can't
that,
imagine why.
all right, right.
Yeah.
That I think affected his school a little bit. He Once he hit puberty, he, I guess, discovered that he was a homosexual, and he kind of kept that to himself though, because he was afraid of his dad. He feared his father. But his dad died in 1965 of a heart attack on Christmas Day, and I think that happened when he was about 16. And after that, he kind of was open about being gay.
Right.
Not super like flamboyant though. He, just by looking at him, you would never really know. But shortly after his dad died, his mom got remarried, and I don't think it took very long. And so Bob kind of resented her for that. And even though he wasn't his dad's biggest fan, he still felt like, that wasn't really right.
Right.
So because of that, he kind of become even more withdrawn from his mother then. And he kind of just started doing things on his own. He started painting. He would collect coins and stamps. And he had some pen pals from overseas, which is really interesting too, because I kind of wonder how do you write back and forth with people who are foreign to our country, because we don't speak the same language.
I would have to think probably more English is a universal language than
Okay.
what we give it credit for.
Okay.
I feel
Okay.
like, especially like Germany and places like that, it's
Yeah.
pretty much taught like their own language.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's more
Just
of a,
because
the
we're
most, I would
superior.
imagine, the most universal language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so he had some pen pals from all over the world, and I think he kind of built quite a few relationships with people outside of the country because of that. And they would send him stamps, so he would collect those stamps from different countries. They would send him photos of different like ancient or historical figures or statues, and they would send him information on like their ancient cultures and architect, that kind of thing.
Right.
He went on to graduate high school in 1966, and he moved to Kansas City to attend Kansas City Art Institute. He did really great his freshman year, and then moving on to his sophomore year, he kind of fell into, I guess, a clique that would do drugs, and they would sell the drugs to him, and in turn, he would sell the drugs and profit off of it. And then he also began abusing alcohol. So he ended up getting arrested for attempting to sell methamphetamines to an undercover cop. He got a 5-year suspended sentence. And then a month later, he was caught for possession of marijuana and LSD. That ended up getting dropped because of lack of evidence. But, he kind of started to get into a little bit of trouble. He wasn't doing as well in school. He also tortured some animals. I know. I knew you were waiting on it. So he started messing around with some animal tranquilizer. He tranquilized a dog, I guess just to kind of experiment and see what it would do.
So at this point, we've got emotionally detached from
Yeah,
the father, and actually, I guess the mother too. Now,
from the mother too now.
we have a overachieving brother.
Yeah.
We have thick glasses, speech impediment, and a drug addiction.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Now
good
we're
combo, right?
playing. Now we're playing with dead
How all
animals.
that would work out, right?
Now we're playing with dead animals. I see where this is going.
Yeah.
Well, it gets even better. So in 1969, he was criticized and probably looked down on pretty harshly because he beheaded a duck in front of the class, a live duck,
So he's an Ozzy fan.
and cooked the duck in front of the class for the sake of art.
Yeah.
This
Well,
was this was
must be
art, and
abstract.
he right, it's got to be something. So after that, he's like, "Well, y'all just apparently don't appreciate my art." So he decided to withdraw from college, which I'm kind of surprised he didn't get like expelled or something.
Well, you're looking at the late '60s.
I know, you're
People's skin
right.
were a little thicker back then
You're
than what
right.
it
You're
is
right.
today.
So I guess all that happened was he was criticized. Um, so even though he wasn't in college anymore, he decided he was just going to stay in Kansas City. You know, he didn't have anything back in Ohio. His mom's remarried. His brother's the golden child. His father's gone. So he decided to, he ended up buying a house in Kansas City after, which I'm sure he went through pretty rough times before buying the house. I know that he worked, in food service and restaurants. He would he worked in restaurants. He also he started selling some of the antique items that he had from the people that would send him stuff from overseas from the friendships that he had made over the years. And then he just kind of got out of his drug and alcohol a little bit, and he started to make friends with some of the drug addicts and the criminals, the runaways, and he decided he was going to help them change their lifestyles too. And I think during that time, people kind of thought, "Oh, he's a pretty good man. Like
So
he's
now we have potential victims.
right."
I see where this is going.
That's where it's going. That's where it's going. And so he would rely on these people mainly for companionship, for friendship. He didn't have any friends. So he thought, well, if I'm giving these people a place to stay and I'm feeding them, then maybe they'll be my friend. Maybe I'll have a companion. Um, and then eventually he started to, and he said throughout the 70s, while he's helping these people, he never engaged in any sexual acts with them, even though some of them were prostitutes. But then moving on to the 80s, he did begin engaging in sexual acts with them. He felt like he was gaining control because he would loan them money, but only if he got what he wanted in return.
Right.
They could stay with him, but only if he got what he wanted. And then around this time, he ended up actually getting promoted to head chef in a couple of these restaurants that he worked in. So a lot of people, he was starting to, I think, become kind of like a well-known member in the
In
community.
society. Yeah.
Yep. People, I think, kind of respected him. He was even a part of I think it's like the neighborhood crime watch. And he ended up being a chairman. And he participated in that and all through, I think, like the mid 80s. So he was a pretty, upstanding guy. He would volunteer at fundraising events. Um, and but around this time, his antiquing, collecting, selling these items it was kind of blowing up. And so he decided, I'm going to quit being a chef and I'm going to rent this booth at their local flea market. And he called it Bob's Bizarre Bazaar.
It's bizarre, all right.
Bob's Bizarre Bazaar. And I've seen a lot of like conflicting things. I've seen that he would sell human skulls in this little antique store.
Okay.
But I watched interviews with him and he was like, no, that absolutely didn't happen.
Well, that would definitely be a red flag. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know. There were also like bone necklaces, like necklaces made out of bones, and he claims that those were camel bones. He said, if I'm killing a victim, I would not take the time to make the beads out of the bones from those victims when I can get them from overseas for a very small price.
getting them from a victim would be free.
That's true. That's true. But I guess just talking like that would be a lot of work for me, and I'm not putting in that kind of work.
Well, being a serial killer is tough work.
Right? It is.
Bob's
I'm
Bizarre
sure.
Bazaar.
Uh-huh. So let's see. I guess even though he had this little antique store, it wasn't bringing in quite enough revenue. So he would also sometimes steal items from people to then put into his shop to sell to make more money. And then he also around this time would he was taking in more lodgers, more people to come stay with him. And he says that this was in good faith, letting people come and stay, and they would either pay him to stay, or he would say, you can just do chores for me around the house, or cut my grass and take care of this and that, and we'll be good.
Oh, by the way, the lawnmower's in the basement. There's no light down there.
That's right. So when he was working at this flea market, there was a guy who worked beside him in another booth named Paul Howell. And Paul had a son who was probably 15 or 16 at the time when they started working, alongside each other. And throughout the next probably 4 years or so, Paul's son Jerry and Bob kind of formed a little bit of a relationship. Friends, just friends, until Jerry become of age. And then Jerry would run Paul's store occasionally to make some money. And, if Paul couldn't work that day, Jerry would come work for him. And so Bob and Jerry got pretty close over time. Jerry's family, Paul's family, they weren't like doing super great financially. So Jerry he was also a male prostitute. And Bob would eventually, he started paying him for sexual relations. And it was just kind of here and there. And then it kind of got to the point where Jerry was refusing to have sex with him. He was like, no, I'll do these chores for you, but I'm not having sex with you anymore.
Victim number
1. Jerry Howell. He was 19 years old at the time. And Bob offered to drive him. It was 4th of July. Bob offered to drive him to a dance contest. So I'm assuming that Jerry was a little bit more flamboyant
It sounds
than
like
That's
it
what I
could have
thought.
been.
Bob was. Yes.
And we're talking this
Um,
is the 80s, right? At by this
yes.
point. So they were
Yes.
probably
Yeah,
going
mid
to a
80s.
breakdancing
This is
contest.
84. Yep. So he says, I'm going to take you to this dance contest. And so he before they go, he says, let's go to my house. We'll drink some beers before we go. So they're drinking their beers, and Bob ends up giving Jerry some Valium. And
You know, is it just me or does this sound very John Wayne Gacy? You know,
Pretty similar.
you kind of lured him in and here, let's drink a beer and you never leave again.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it also kind of though reminds me of Jeffrey Dahmer, and it was around the
Mm-hmm.
same time. This happened right before Jeffrey Dahmer, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's why people don't know as much about
Because Jeff took
Bob,
the spotlight.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
Jeff took the spotlight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I definitely feel like that he is more relatable to Dahmer than any other serial killer that I've read about. And I didn't know anything about Bob. But
So,
once
but
you
think of the
kind of get
similarities
into
though.
his victims,
They're
well,
all three were kind of pillars of the community. Dahmer, not so much.
yes.
But they preyed on male,
Yeah.
mostly
Yeah.
prostitute, I guess.
Mhm.
Come on in, drink a beer with me type things. All three of them have that in common right now. Now I'm curious to hear the method of murder to see how.
Listen, I'm excited for you to hear it, but I'm not gonna lie. Researching about it kind of made me a little bit sick to my stomach.
Ooh, now I'm peaked. You made me sit up in my chair.
He had to get straight. So he gives him some Valium, and eventually Jerry passes out between the alcohol and the Valium, and it wasn't out of the normal because Jerry and Bob had taken Valium together before. It was something that they would regularly do. But probably not quite as many as he'd given Jerry, and maybe not with alcohol. So he decides that he is going to kind of get his revenge on Jerry. Jerry won't have sex with him anymore, so he's going to force him. So he also wants to remember every detail. So he decides he's going to write everything down in a notebook. And he also wants to take pictures of every step with his Polaroid camera so that he could also visualize it.
Dahmer.
Again and again and again.
Again and again. Yes. So in his notebook, he writes 6:40 p.m. falls asleep. So now Jerry's asleep. 7 o'clock, he injects him with 1 cc of tranquilizer in his arm. 7:25, he injects 2 cc's. 7:30, he injects 3 cc's. He wants to make sure he's really out.
Okay, Abby, this is a question for you. For
Yes.
something like that, that's just not a subcutaneous stick. Is that something that has to go in a vein?
No, because it can be IM, and it does not have to be specific to the vein because it's going to travel across muscles and it's going to get to the nerve endings and everything it needs to get to without being routed directly through a vein.
Okay.
And that's why he uses animal tranquilizers, in my opinion, because they're easily available and because you don't have to run them IV. You can just shoot them pretty much in any large muscle, and it's going to do the trick.
Okay. I was just wondering if he had any
Yeah.
kind of knowledge, with the drug use as far as finding a vein, but it sounds like all you can do is just stick it in either the hind end, the belly, the
And
back of the arm.
yep,
Okay.
If you inject it into a vein, though, does it go quicker? Does it work faster?
I mean, reasoning, clinical reasoning would say yes,
Okay.
but I'm pretty sure that you are going to get the same type of outcome whether you do IM or IV, but I feel like you would probably get a quicker outcome IV.
Okay. Interesting.
But I still
Okay.
feel like that you would get the same outcome.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess I should preface. So earlier in the day, he knew he was going to be taking Jerry to this contest. So he stops at this veterinary supply store and he gets
Mm-hmm.
the tranquilizer from this store because he breeds chow chows. So he has these big, giant chow chow dogs that he breeds. And so his excuse was, this is for my big dogs. So I'm assuming that he had a little bit of experience maybe injecting the dogs, which I mean, I guess he did it experimentally in college. So,
Okay.
I'm sure he had a little bit of an idea of how it worked.
So I want to hear more about this ledger that he kept. So we're up to 3 cc's.
At 7:30, 7:55, he injects him with 11 cc's.
Holy crap.
Dump,
He's trying to
dump
kill me.
that, didn't
8:40.
I?
Mm-hmm. He's like freaking out at this point. Like he's really got to be out. 8:40, he injects him with 29 cc's total. So now we're up to 29 cc's that he's been injected with this tranquilizer.
Really just killed him.
Right? You would think, but no, he ain't dead yet.
Right.
So at 8:45, he says tied. It says tied up. So let's see. He removes his clothes. He ties him up, ties his legs and his arms to his bed because he'd carried him upstairs after he passed out downstairs. And then, like I said, he makes this, I guess, list of, he wanted to remember the timeline. He makes the timeline and he, I guess at 8:15 the next morning, he wakes up and he's in quite a bit of pain because Robert or Bob had raped him all night long for multiple hours over and over and over. And so, like I said, at 8:15 the next morning he wakes up, he's in excruciating pain, and Bob is quick to inject him with more tranquilizer. And then he says at 8:40 CF. And CF means carrot, FUCK. So he sodomizes him with a carrot at 8:40. Yep.
AM.
No stew at Bob's.
What a way to
AM.
start the damn day off.
Right?
What a
Don't
way to
eat-
start it off.
Don't eat the stew at Bob's house.
No.
Well, I also want to say this, and not that it matters to anybody but me, but when I read about this, one of the things that stood out to me was Bob was not a very tidy person.
Yes.
He was a hoarder of items, trash. So when you looked at his house from the outside, it just looked like your typical, 2-story family style home.
I
But
think it was
whenever
actually
you
a 3-story
enter-
home.
Yeah, it was big. I do
Yeah.
know that.
And I do think that
when
the
you
neighbors,
entered it,
I think that the neighbors even mentioned, like, he's a really great guy. But yeah, his yard's a little bit cluttered.
So the
messy.
inside of the house looked
Yeah.
like Bob's Bizarre Bazaar.
It
On
looked like
steroids.
bizarre toilet, because there was dog mess everywhere. There was things he'd collected. There were all of this trash and garbage. So yeah, you don't want to ever eat at Bob's
No,
for any
never,
reason,
ever. It
anything.
was very much a hoarder's house.
Yeah, the
I had
cats
seen
anyway.
pictures, and there were trinkets and magazines and newspapers and just everything stacked
Everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine the smell.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Especially
I
with
find that
the
odd.
dog mess.
I did find that odd, as meticulous a note keeper that he was. And
Yes.
here he was in his life, so unorganized
Mhm.
and messy and cluttery. He was a very strict keeper of facts in his book.
Mhm.
Times, dates, amounts, all of this time,
Also,
everything.
all of the people that he had, coming in and out of his house that were there to do chores for him or
Right,
clean
right,
or, it is kind of shocking. But I would say, hoarders, they don't want to get rid of anything. And
right.
they like the mess. They like things how they are. So I'm sure
Yes,
he was
yes,
probably very strict with everybody on what you can and cannot touch.
right.
But
I agree with
somebody
that.
come in there and said, "Damn, Bob, what's going on in the bazaar in here?"
Right,
What in the
yeah,
bazaar is going on?
right.
Okay, so after the CF,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what was the last or
So
the next one?
What was
Bob
the
leaves
next
for work.
vegetable?
He leaves for work. He goes to
Okay,
work. He decides the carrot's enough for now.
for that day.
Um, Everybody works said that he acted normal that day at the flea market, selling his trinkets and bones and whatever else. They did note that he left work a little early that day,
I wonder if he
and
sold produce that day.
I would
Yeah,
At his
sure hope not.
stand. Yeah.
I
wow,
would sure hope not.
got to get
Just
home to the
wanted to toss
stew.
that out there.
And
Okay,
so
sorry.
he gets home from work at 3 o'clock, and he rapes and tortures and sodomizes Jerry. At 5:15, Jerry wakes up and starts pulling on his restraints, and he's asking Bob, like, let me go, let me go. And Bob knew at this point that he had two options: either let him go and he's going to get in a lot of trouble, or kill him. So he decides, but he's not
Goes with the
finished with his
latter.
experiment.
Yeah.
So he injects him with 20 more cc's. Jerry's out for the count, and he says CUCR. So CUCR. That means cucumber rape.
Mm-hmm.
Dear God, what is it
Yeah.
with produce in this
It's
guy?
I
bigger,
don't
bigger
know. I
than the
don't know,
carrot.
man. And so he sodomizes him until he starts bleeding from his anus.
Yeah.
And um, so after being tortured for a little over 24 hours, I think it was like 26 hours at this point, it's 10 p.m. on July 6th. Jerry stops breathing. And Bob, I don't think, was quite ready for that. He didn't really plan for what to do for after he died. So he performed CPR on him, but he was
Mm-hmm.
unsuccessful. So he untied his body, he dragged him down to the basement, and in the basement he had an antique pulley system. So he straps that to his ankles and pulls him up. So he's dangling in the air from his ankles. And he decides to take a big cooking pot and put that underneath of him. And he cuts the arteries in both of his arms and his neck, and
Like a
lets
deer.
his body drain lets
Yeah.
his body drain of the blood, and it's being caught in this, big cooking
Pot.
pot.
Yeah.
And he leaves him there for 2 days. I can only imagine what he's doing those 2 days as he's watching, looking, staring at this body.
Mm-hmm.
And then he starts to realize, like, this is starting to smell a little bit. I probably need to do something about this. And so he takes a butcher knife and he's trying to dismember this body, and realizes, well, this isn't going to work. This isn't like cutting up, a cow or
A duck. Or
or
goose.
duck
Right.
or goose or whatever. So he starts using his chainsaw, and after dismembering the body, he wraps each piece in newspaper, and he puts each piece of the body into trash bags, and he puts them out at the curb for the sanitation guys to pick it up. And
They do.
he that's what and he watches too. He watches for hours. He wants to make sure that it's being picked up by the garbage men. Um, and they did. They took his body to the landfill, and shortly after, so Paul, Jerry's dad, he knows, you know, that he was planning on taking him to this contest, and the police come and talk to him, and Bob's like, I took him to the contest. I dropped him off. That was it. And so the police kind of just saw it as, well, he's a 19-year-old runaway. Um, and he wasn't ever questioned again about it until he was later on caught. But Paul, his dad, was very suspicious of him. And because he talked to the police, he was very paranoid. He went months before killing his next victim, which was Robert Sheldon. He was 23 years old, April 10th, 1985. So about 9 months later. He was a former lodger of his. He asks if he can stay with him at his house. And he had stayed with him before for months, kind of like overstayed his welcome. Bob just found him very annoying. And he also didn't think that Sheldon was very attractive. So he was like, no,
Right.
go away. I don't want you to stay with me. 2 days later, he shows up again on his doorstep. Bob gets home from work. There he is. He's drunk. Bob's even more annoyed. So he's like, yeah, sure. You know
Okay.
what? Come on in.
I got
Come
you.
on in.
That was a
So that's the
fatal
next
mistake.
victim. Yep, that's the next victim. April 12th. So, Robert Sheldon, he's already drunk. And so he decides to inject his arm with tranquilizer. And he's so drunk that he doesn't even realize it happened. But it wasn't quite enough for him. So they say that redheads don't have quite as much, that they're much more tolerable to sedatives. So I kind of wonder if maybe he's a redhead. I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
But he wouldn't ever go to sleep. It just never happened. He was just getting on Bob's nerves. So Bob decides to go to bed. He wakes up the next morning, and Robert Sheldon is talking about just how odd he feels. He doesn't feel well. So Bob takes him to the doctor, and the doctor prescribes him an antibiotic. Like, how funny is that?
Yeah.
So he goes back home with Bob, and later that night, Bob goes to give him his antibiotic. Robert didn't realize that it wasn't his antibiotic. And he's also drunk because Robert is an alcoholic. So he gives him Valium instead of the antibiotic, and that kind of knocks him out. And then he injects him with tranquilizer, and he carries him upstairs to his bedroom, undresses him, ties him up, rapes him. And then he kind of gets into experimenting even more. He puts Drano on a cotton swab and dabs it into his eyes because he's thinking if he gets loose, he's not going to be able to see. He also tries putting caulking inside of his ears because he's thinking if this works, he won't be able to hear either. That in fact did not work because it wouldn't stick to, I guess, his ears, the outer side of his ears. He would insert needles under his nails, and he also bound his wrists with piano wire to try to cause nerve damage to the hands. And then he also gave him a soap and water enema, I guess, so that things would be cleaner for him.
How in the world have we not heard of this guy?
I know, right? He was
'Cause
brutal.
he's just as every
Well,
bit brutal as
And
any
it gets
one of them
better.
I've
It gets
heard.
better.
he literally wanted to keep these people with him,
Yeah.
whether he had disdain for them or whether he cared about them
And
and
whether
just wanted
they
them to
liked it or not,
stay.
they were
They
they
would
were going to
stay.
stick around.
Yeah.
Um, so a couple days go by. The torture continues with the cucumber and the carrot and various household items. Um, on April 15th, there is a one of Bob's friends is there to work on the roof, and Bob completely forgets about it, and he starts freaking out. So he runs upstairs, and he puts a bag over his head and smothers him, and kills him because he was like, I can't get caught for this. And so he realized that the cooking pot was not quite big enough to hold all of that blood. He had to do a lot of cleaning down there in the basement. He didn't want to do that this time. So he takes him to the bathroom and drains his blood in the bathtub.
Hmm.
And from there, he dismembered the body, and he decided this victim, he's going to keep their head. And he digs a hole and buries the head in his backyard, and the rest of the
Mhm.
body goes out to the trash.
Yeah.
And then the next victim was Mark Wallace. He was 20 years old. He kind of worked around Bob's house a little bit, cutting grass, doing maintenance on the house.
Mhm.
He found him hiding in his tool shed to get out of the rain, and I guess he kind of the dog started barking, and that's kind of what Bob was like, who's there, So he starts talking to Mark. Mark says, my mom's out of the country. I'm just really depressed right now. So Bob's like, well, how about I give you something to relax you? So he gives him Valium. And then after that, he injects him with some tranquilizer. And this is where so he carries him upstairs, ties him up just like his other victims. He starts with the alligator clips. So he puts alligator clips to his nipples, and he does that to facilitate electric shocks. So he has some kind of, from what I gathered, it was like some kind of battery to the to like a train engine,
Mhm.
and that somehow he can turn it on and off, and it would shock his victims.
Yes, that would still be 120 volts, but it would
Oh
be
yeah.
what they call variable power. You could either increase it, decrease it, full
Okay, yeah.
power.
So
It's
that's what he used.
basically to make the train go faster. You push it farther,
Okay,
because
yeah.
it gets more electric that
That
way.
makes
And
sense
so,
because he hooks it to the guy's scrotum
Mhm.
and lights him up like a Christmas tree
Yeah,
a couple
correct.
times.
yeah. And he also starts messing a little bit with acupuncture, hypodermic needles
Hmm.
in the back
Yeah.
and various different muscles to see how, I guess, it makes the muscles contract.
Hmm.
Oh,
Um,
it would make them contract all right.
mhm. And so it wasn't very long before Mark died. I don't think he was even alive for
I
24
Yeah, I
hours.
was gonna say I'm pretty sure that it just shocked his whole body,
Oh, yeah.
and it
Because that was
shocked
the first time that he
Bob too.
used the electricity, and it
Hmm.
he didn't last very long. So he
Right.
died at 7 p.m. on June 23rd. The next victim is James Ferris. He called to ask Bob if he could stay with him. Of course, Bob said, "Yeah, sure." I think at this point, Bob was kind of just tired of people using him after he had tried to be, I guess, nice and try to
Yeah,
get them out of
nice.
their
Hmm.
lifestyles, and he kind of felt like people were taking advantage of him. I know people had stolen quite a bit of things from him, and he was just out to get his revenge at this point.
Hmm.
So he asks if he can stay. Bob says sure. So he drugs him, ties him to the bed, and he tortures him constantly for over 27 hours. I don't know how Bob isn't so sleep deprived
Wore out.
during all of this,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
um, this victim, he uses the electric shock on the shoulders, and I think I've seen pictures of this one, like the Polaroid of this one,
Hmm.
of it kind of like connected to the fatty part on the shoulders and his testicles for up to
Yeah.
5 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Um, And then he also uses the hypodermic needles in the neck, and then he uses them in the genitals too. And he continued this until James couldn't even hold his head up for more than 5-10 seconds at a time. And he ended up having very delayed breathing, and until eventually he stopped breathing. Bob put in his little recording book the number 86, which in, I guess, chef's terms means throw it out, stop the project. It's no good. It's trash.
Yeah.
So he proceeds to do him the same way. He puts him in the bathtub, dismembers him, puts him in the trash. Trash guys haul him off. The next victim was Todd Stoops. I know I'm going kind of fast, but I want to make sure we get to all of the victims.
Yeah, and time's ticking.
I know. So there's Todd Stoops. He was a 23-year-old drug addict and an occasional prostitute. He lived previously with Bob on 2 different occasions with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
With his wife. The wife knew what was going on, but Bob was supporting their
make money.
Their drug habits. So she's like, yeah, you work it, honey. You work it.
Right.
So Bob runs into Todd at the Kansas City Liberty Memorial Park on June 17th, 1986. And so Bob invites him over, or invited him to go out to lunch. And then after lunch, he's like, well, I'll pay you $13 if you come over to my house and have sex. Because he was very, very attracted to him. He was very attracted to him.
Well, I think that's a very odd number.
$13, which I think I read was like the equivalent of like $37 today.
Yeah. What the Bazaar made that day.
I know, right? He held him captive for 2 weeks. Because he didn't want him to die. He was infatuated.
Cucumbers and carrots for 2 weeks.
Yes, bless his heart. Bless his butthole.
Yes.
That too.
Yes.
Dear God.
I know. Yep. And so he really wanted to make it work with him, and he wanted to make him cooperate, and he tried, and this victim
didn't do it.
Well, I'll tell you what he did. He ended up putting the electric shocks on his eyelids and tried to blind him by causing damage to the optic nerves. And he also injected his voice box with Drano so that he couldn't scream, couldn't make noise. And he asks Bob for a sandwich and a soda. And Bob got aggravated, and he said no. And so he starts to cry. He bursts into tears, and he decides that he's just going to put the whole hand in, and he ruptures his anal wall. Yeah. And after this, over the next couple of days...
Wait a minute. You mean literal hand?
Literal hand. Mm-hmm. Oh, mm-hmm. Yep. Ruptures the anal wall. And so... Oh, sorry. Had to get readjusted. Todd ends up not being able to eat or drink anything without vomiting. He can't hold anything down. And he's just kind of getting weaker by the hour. And I guess he was like burning up, very hot. And Bob ends up putting him in a cold shower, trying to get his fever to break. And he ended up dying in the shower. And I guess they kind of figured out what had actually happened was the rupture of the anal wall caused him to go into septic shock. So he ended up dying of infection. The next victim was Larry Pearson, and he was 20 years old. He calls Bob and he says, hey, will you come bail me out of jail? And so...
$13.
Right. So this was the last of the 6 murders that he committed. And So Bob did. Bob went and got him out of jail. He took him to the movies and he took him to lunch. And I guess Larry starts joking about making a joke about gay men. And so Bob didn't like that. So he took him to his house and he got him intoxicated and he ended up raping him as well, using the electric shocks. He ended up keeping this feller for 6 weeks. 6 whole weeks. Yeah. And then he kind of like drags him around the house with a dog collar around his neck, and he has a leash tied to him. And Larry Pearson, he's committed. Like, he's doing everything he can to stay alive. So he's on his best behavior, and Bob also gives him like incentives. Like, you can sit here on the couch with me and watch TV, but you got to be good. You know, you got to do what I'm asking. And so he was performing oral sex on Bob, and he ends up almost biting his penis completely in half. So Bob gets mad and he completely bludgeons him with a tree limb, and he ends up suffocating him with a bag and a ligature. And then he goes to the hospital to get treated. They wanted to, I know, right? They wanted to keep him there, admit him for antibiotics, and Bob said, no, I've got to go home first and take care of my dogs. So what he really does is he's got to dismember. No, he doesn't dismember him. Do you remember what he did? I don't think he dismembered him until he got home from the hospital.
I'm not for sure on that one.
Not sure?
No, I got about 4 deep, and that was about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think I want to say he took him down to the basement or something so that it would be colder. I don't remember. But he ends up going back to the hospital after he takes care of business at home. And he is in the hospital, I think, for a couple of days. He goes back home and he's in excruciating pain. And it takes him at least a couple of days to break up this body because he's got to do it a little bit at a time. And he ends up putting him on the side of the street for the trash to pick him up. And then the final victim was Christopher Bryson. He ends up actually getting away, jumping out of a 2-story window after Bob had left for work. And he ran over to the neighbor's house completely naked with nothing on but a collar, a dog collar. Yeah. And the police come. The police come. They arrest Berdella after looking at the house and looking at the room that Christopher Bryson had explained to them, and it kind of all added up. And then I think he died not too long after that in prison.
Yeah, he was having
just a couple years after that, he died in prison of a heart attack.
Yeah.
And that's the story. That's the story of...
That's all. Yeah, Robert Berdella.
So, to me, this guy is every bit as brutal as Dahmer. And somehow Dahmer took precedence over this guy.
Well, and then the timeline was very similar. The intentions, the reasons, all that very similar. I want to do this and this and this to you so that you'll stay with me. I don't want you to die. Like I want to, disarm you, but I don't want you to die. I just want to do what I want to do to you. And I definitely think we would all know his name had Jeffrey Dahmer not jumped the line there.
Right. And I think the only reason Dahmer did, he just killed so many more.
Yeah, and
versus just
the
6.
cannibalism
Yeah. Look, you're
thing
sticking your
kind
hand
of
up somebody's hind end to the point to where you're killing them. That's got to
that's
take over liver
something.
eating.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was very sick in the head.
yeah,
Very much.
yeah,
It's just wow. That's
yeah.
incredible. So,
And
man,
also, I think that it's awesome that it's not awesome, but it's very, I guess, cool in a way that he did write everything down and you really get like a
A play-by-play.
play-by-play, yes, of how everything happened.
everything was
Mhm.
premeditated.
In a way, I think.
I mean, up to the point to when I don't think the actual tying up and all that was premeditated, but once that presented itself from that point on, it was all premeditated and wrote down. But guys, with that, gosh, we could go on and on. I'm fascinated with this guy now, the Butcher of Kansas City.
Kansas. Yeah.
Yeah, Kansas
All right,
City
guys.
Butcher, the collector.
Yeah. Check us, nighthawk-radio.com. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, YouTube Music, Facebook, all under Nighthawk Radio. You can find us on Rumble, Nighthawk Radio, all one word. Live 365 app. Look us up. And with that,
Like
Seth,
it,
man,
share it. Yes.
take us home.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
At Nighthawk Radio, we don't forget to hit the button. Everybody have a good night and God bless.